with Fairfax County's Department of Transportation. And I want to welcome you to this meeting tonight to discuss the traffic calming plan for the western section of Fairway Drive. And we can start with introductions. And tonight from FCDOT, we have Ryan O'Carroll and Nicole Machakwe. And from the Hunter Mill District Supervisor's Office, Shamali Hoth is joining us. Ryan has a short presentation to go through. And after the presentation, the Community Task Force has a presentation, a couple of slides they'd like to go over also. So after the task force slides are shown, we'll open up the meeting to the community for any questions or comments. Shamali, would you like to say anything before we start?
I just want to say thank you to both staff and to the task force for all the work that you've done to pull this together. So appreciate it. Look forward to the presentation.
All right, thank you, Shamali. Ryan, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start the presentation.
Sure, thanks, Steve. All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, we're going to discuss the traffic calming program for Fairway Drive, the western portion. And if you just joined, we have put in the chat, if you do need closed captions, there are instructions that Nicole put in there. And then let's jump into this. The Fairfax County Department of Transportation and Fairfax Connector operate programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. For more information, please visit the website listed in the presentation slide. Please note that this session is being recorded and may be shared on social media. Please hold all questions until the end of the presentation, and instructions for how to ask your questions will be provided at the end of the presentation. Today, we are here to explain the traffic calming process, provide an opportunity for community feedback, and answer any questions anyone may have. So what is traffic calming? Traffic calming is the installation of physical devices to reduce vehicle speed. These devices can either be vertical or horizontal. Vertical devices are driven over, such as the speed hump shown in the upper left-hand corner. Horizontal devices can be driven around, such as the raised median island shown in the upper right-hand corner. Both types of devices make the roadway safer for drivers and pedestrians. Please note that through this process, we are not permitted to install stop signs. Here we have charts and images showing the effects of decreased speed. As speed decreases, visual acuity, field of vision, and depth perception increase. Also, with reduced speed, we can see a decrease in stopping distance. Here's a map displaying traffic calming projects across Fairfax County. With over 294 projects resulting in more than 707 devices countywide, every district has implemented traffic calming measures. The chances that you've driven over one are quite high. FCDOT and the District Supervisor's Office collaborate with citizens on all community-initiated projects. The program can be broken down into five steps. Step 1 is project initiation. Step 2 is plan development. Step 3 is community engagement. Step 4 is the valid phase. And the final step, step 5, is project installation. All traffic calming projects are community initiated. The process begins with a request from the community to the District Supervisor's Office. Once the request is received, FCDOT will complete a basic eligibility review. If eligible, FCDOT will then conduct a traffic study. And if the eligibility and traffic study requirements are met, the community will then form a task force. To meet the basic eligibility requirements, the roadway must be VDOT maintained, have a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, be functionally classified as local, collector, or arterial, and if it is a collector or arterial, it needs to be a residential street. Once passing basic eligibility requirements, we move on to conduct a traffic study. For the volume criteria, we need between 500 to 6,000 vehicles in 24 hours, both directions combined. For the western portion of Fairway Drive, we had 1,400 vehicles, so we met the volume criteria. For the speed criteria, the recorded 85th percentile speed needs to be greater than or equal to 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. This means that 15% of vehicles will need to be traveling at 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit or faster in at least one direction of travel. The 85th percentile speed was 40 miles per hour in the eastbound lane and 34 miles per hour in the westbound lane, which means that the eastern portion of Fairway Drive met the speed criteria. The next step is plan development. FCDOT will conduct a site visit in the field in order to develop a draft plan. Once a draft plan has been developed, FCDOT will meet with the task force to obtain feedback and amend the plan if necessary. Then once the task force is satisfied with the draft plan, property owners directly adjacent to any proposed measures must sign off on the device placement before proceeding to the next step of the project. There are device placement requirements for vertical devices. The devices must be a minimum of 300 feet between measures and from existing stop conditions, a minimum of 150 feet from intersections, a minimum of 150 feet for continuous sight distance, and it also has to fit within the existing roadway. So we must consider driveways, manholes, utilities, and the grade of the road. So based on those requirements, we created a field map that gives us an idea of where we can place a device. Highlighted in green are possible locations along the western portion of Fairway Drive. After reviewing the field map, we then conduct a field review to see if a device can fit on the existing roadway. So based on the available options in our site visit, FCDOT is able to propose 3 speed humps with fire and rescue cutouts along Fairway Drive, the western portion. The listed addresses are those of property owners who signed the adjacent property forms because the devices are directly adjacent to their property. Here we have the speed hump and speed table schematic with the fire and rescue cutouts. It will include white chevrons in each travel lane and a double yellow center line and a speed hump sign with a recommended speed of 15 miles per hour on each side of the device. This is a larger image of what the proposed speed hump would look like from the side of it. It would be 12 feet in length and 3 inches high at center. If you're driven over the eastern portion of Fairway Drive, those are the same type of speed humps with the fire and rescue cutouts that we're proposing tonight. Step 3 is a community meeting, which is where we are today. At this stage, FCDOT presents the plan to the community to gather feedback. Based on this feedback, the task force will decide whether to amend the plan or move to the next phase. If the task force decides to move forward, we will move to the ballot phase. During the ballot phase, each occupied property in the ballot area will receive 1 vote and send it directly to the district supervisor's office. The ballot period will be open for a minimum of 3 weeks, and the district supervisor's office will tally the votes and notify the task force of the result. On this slide, we have an example of a ballot. The proposed devices will be listed on the ballot, and the community will be voting for the entire plan. The task force is responsible for distributing the ballot packages to everyone in the ballot area. There are 3 ways to return your ballot by the deadline. You can mail in your ballot directly to the district supervisor's office. You can hand deliver it directly to the district supervisor's office, or you can email it directly to the district supervisor's office. Please note that all ballots must be directly turned into the district supervisor's office using one of these 3 methods. Any ballots collected by the task force will not be counted. Here's the ballot area map for Fairway Drive, the western portion. There are 241 ballots. In order for the proposed plan to move forward, we will need greater than 50% of all occupied properties to vote in favor. Therefore, there will be a needed 121 yes votes. And if the required number of yes votes are met, we move forward to step 5, which is project installation. The traffic calming plan will be presented to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for endorsement, and the resolution will be sent to VDOT. Once endorsed and VDOT accepts the resolution, FCDOT will work with the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services to schedule installation. Finally, the traffic calming measures outlined in the plan will be installed. After tonight's meeting, the task force will need to follow these next steps. The task force will notify Fairfax County if they would like to move forward with the presented plan. An optional meeting is available to meet with FCDOT to review the balloting process. This meeting is highly recommended to ensure a smooth balloting period. The task force in the district supervisor's office will notify FCDOT if ballots in the ballot area are to be distributed to the property owners or occupants. The task force completes a ballot cover letter provided by FCDOT, including task force contact information, ballot received by date, ballot closed by date, and any additional messages that the task force would like to include. The task force will send the completed ballot cover letter to FCDOT for approval. Once approved, they will receive the verified ballot package. And for the final step, the task force will need to print and distribute the ballots to all properties in the ballot area. This concludes the FCDOT section of the presentation. I'll now hand it off to the task force lead, who has a few slides to go over before we move to the questions and answers portion of this meeting.
Thanks, Ryan.
Sure.
I'm Steve Sarandos. I'm the lead for the task force. I'll make this quick so we can get to the question and answer part of the meeting. I wanted to start out with some key things to know about voting for the plan. I know Ryan covered some of this, but I want to emphasize how important it is that everybody send in their ballot if they want it to pass. First, it's important to remember you don't send in the ballot. It is the same as voting no. That means if you forget the vote or just don't get around to it, you are voting no. So if you want the plan to pass, make sure you actually send in the ballot. Another thing to note is that we need 121 yes votes to pass the plan out of the 241 properties that can vote. So over 50%. That's not 50% of the votes cast, but 50% of anyone who could vote. This is not like a typical election where it would be the majority of the votes cast. It's like requiring 50% plus of all eligible voters to vote yes. Just to show you how tough that is to achieve, by those rules, not one of our county supervisors would have been elected. Neither would our new governor. It's a significant hurdle, so we need people to vote. If the plan doesn't pass, we'll have to wait 2 years to try again to get traffic calming. So when will we vote? I think Ryan covered that already. So why should you vote for the plan? Next slide, please. So as part of determining our eligibility for the traffic calming, FCDOT conducted a 24-hour traffic study, and this is a summary of some of the results. They found that 82% of vehicles were going faster than the posted 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. 47% of vehicles were speeding between 30 and 75 miles per hour. Yes, 75 miles per hour, that's not a typo. 3.45% of vehicles were going faster than 55 miles per hour. Next slide. Just to show how dangerous those speeds are, this table comes from a AAA study about the risk of pedestrian severe injury or death when hit by a car or a light truck at certain speeds. You can see that as you get up into the higher speeds seen on Fairway Drive, your chance of dying rapidly increases. At about 42 miles per hour, the odds of survival drop to a coin flip. You have about a 50-50 chance. At 45 miles per hour, you're pretty much guaranteed to be seriously injured. Once speeds reach 55 miles per hour, the likelihood of death reaches 90%. Driver reaction time is another thing to consider. At higher speeds, the stopping distance increases exponentially, making a collision more likely to occur at full speed without braking. Next slide. Many people don't realize how much speed affects the deadliness of a crash. The force of impact doesn't just add up as you go faster, it multiplies. Doubling your speed doesn't just double the impact, it quadruples it. This is why a small 5 mile per hour difference can be a difference between a bruise and a fatality. As an example, we can compare it to falling from a building. Being hit by a car at 20 miles per hour is like falling from a 1-story building. At 50 miles per hour, it's like falling from a 9-story building. Small increases in speed make the impact heavier very quickly. The AAA study from the previous slide only looked at the risk of pedestrians by cars and light trucks, your chances get much worse when you factor in SUVs. Many studies show that larger vehicles like SUVs and pickups are more likely to kill or seriously injure pedestrians and cyclists. They're more likely to strike people in the head and chest rather than the legs. According to another study, pedestrians are at least twice as likely to be killed by an SUV or other large vehicle. Age also makes a huge difference, since being hit is far more deadly for children and older pedestrians. Next slide. As an example of how it is more deadly for older pedestrians, this graphic shows some of the data from the AAA study. A 70-year-old hit by a car going 35 miles per hour and a 30-year-old hit by a car going 45 miles per hour both have about a 50-50 chance of dying. Look at 35 miles per hour on the chart outlined in green. A 30-year-old pedestrian has a 22% chance of dying. A 70-year-old's chance is over double that at 54%. Next slide. Why do people speed so much on Fairway Drive? So the road design gives drivers a false sense of security, so they drive faster. Fairway Drive has no center lines. I see people driving right in the middle of the road all the time. There are few parked cars on most of the road, and parked cars help narrow the road and make people less comfortable. We only have the one new crosswalk, so pedestrians aren't typically expected to be in the road. There aren't any stop signs to hinder progress. We also have speeders coming from North Shore. People will speed down that hill on North Shore by the school and turn onto Fairway already speeding. All this adds up to a nice wide road to speed down with very little to slow you down. Next slide. How do we fix it? From the study listed at the bottom, if we want drivers to slow down, we don't ignore human behavior. We change the road design to make it feel less safe for drivers to speed. Another way of saying that is that we need to change the street design to reflect the reality. This is where traffic calming measures come into play. They are designed either to hinder speeding or to narrow the road and make it less comfortable to speed. In other words, we fix Fairway Drive by voting for the plan. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And so at this point, we're going to open up the meeting to the rest of the community, to the rest of the attendees. We have the screen up on how to raise your hand and be called on to ask a question. So I guess, Ryan, you're going to go over this really quick.
Yeah. Just a couple notes here. So you have two options to ask your questions, chat or speak. Once the chat item is activated on Teams, you can use it by typing your question. If you want to speak, please click the raise your hand icon. And once the host calls on you to speak, you can unmute yourself by clicking on the mic icon or pressing Control, Shift, and M on your keyboard. Please lower your hand once you are done asking your question. If you are on the phone, please press *5 to raise your hand. When the host calls on you to speak, press *6 to unmute and ask your question. Once you are finished, press *5 again to lower your hand and push *6 to mute yourself. At this time, please feel free to ask any questions you may have, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Also, I would like to note that if you all could remain on mute until you're called upon to have your question asked, that would be fantastic. That kind of gets away from reverb. So we do have a couple hands raised. We have a number one, Sunbriar, Justin Ward, you have your hand up. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, good. So thanks for the opportunity to talk here. So I am the president of the Sunderbriar Cluster HOA. We're right next to and the closest road to the westernmost speed hump. So we've raised concerns about this in the past, and our cluster is almost universally against the idea of putting speed humps down, not because of the speed humps themselves, but mostly because they're being presented as the only idea at this point. And there's lots of other ideas that I would like to hear out. less invasive ones, less costly ones, perhaps more effective ones. So first idea, would like to hear whether this has been discussed or not, is just painting a center line. I think the county's own analysis acknowledges that the absence of a center line contributes to speeding. So I think one less intrusive idea is just to paint one. When I drive on Fairway, it feels narrow only when I'm kind of constrained by either a parked car on one side or I'm passing a car, and that perception of constraint slows me down. And so I think just make that perception of a constraint permanent. Two, we could use a speed feedback sign. I've even seen these as solar powered. So they're very low cost. They're proven to reduce speeds. It's reversible if we want to take it out. No emission impact at all. And third, just do both. If we're really concerned about it, we can easily do both. We care for two main reasons. One is safety. I think humps do slow down traffic, but they're not a universal good. So they increase the likelihood of rear end collisions. People habituate over time and speed up in between them, and they don't do anything for motorcycles. Two is emissions. So every car that brakes before a hump accelerates after the hump. So that's additional emissions, particulate matter, brake dust in the area, which is a problem for people with respiratory problems. This is a residential area, not a minor concern. Noise as well as emissions. So we're not opposed to the idea of reducing traffic on Fairway. We understand the concern. What I'd like to do is request that this be paused until less evasive, cheaper, more effective solutions can be considered first before jumping into speed humps. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I mean, currently we do not have the pole mounted speed display available for permanent installation. It is something that is possibly being considered. We're not completely convinced that in a residential setting where people will see the signage all the time, that that impact of speed reduction is going to last. So that's one thing we would have to consider on a road like Fairway, that with the pole mounted speed display or your speed is type signage, that impact is going to go away over time. So currently they are available for short periods of time, and you can request them through the police. And when available, they will post them on the requested road for a couple of weeks. Regarding the center line, that would be something that you would need to go to VDOT for. I believe we have approached VDOT about putting a center line on Fairway Drive in the past, and they were not supportive of that proposal. So those two items don't really seem to be something that we can take under consideration right now.
Okay, I'm unconvinced by both of your arguments there. I mean, we could always purchase like radar speed signs. So that would be an option. And I don't know. I'm still not convinced that the idea of painting a line is unfeasible. Like I would like to see why that's unfeasible.
Okay. You can purchase one. It's just the ability to place that in the right of way, which you would then need to get a permit. And I'm not positive that VDOT is ready to start issuing permits for that particular reason, unless it's through a program that has been endorsed by the locality. So yes, you can purchase one. I'm not positive you can put it up in a place where it's going to have the impact that you would want.
Shamali, you do have your hand raised. Sorry, Steve, to cut you off.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, and I think this is true. We had talked to VDOT about putting a center line in, and there are portions of the road where if a center line was put in, we would have to eliminate parking on one side completely. Is that correct, Steve? Am I remembering that correctly?
I do think there are certain areas where parking would be impacted if they put a center line in. So that's probably the main reason why they were not too terribly supportive, because there are areas on Fairway where parking would probably be needed, in the sports area around the park, and then also down by the North Shore Drive intersection. So parking can be impacted whenever you are taking into consideration putting in a double yellow center line.
And I would like to reiterate also, just for everyone's information, Fairfax County does not own and maintain the roads within Fairfax County. So they're owned and maintained by VDOT, where we are only permitted to work on the road. So when Steve and Shamali are talking about VDOT putting a center line or approving a center line, it's up to their decision on whether they find it feasible to do so.
Okay. Do we want to move on to Ron?
Yeah.
I believe Ron has his hand up.
Yeah, Ron, you
Thank
can
you,
go ahead and
Keaton.
unmute. Mhm.
Sure, can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can, yes.
I guess my concern, obviously, the safety is very important, probably most important, the intention for doing all this. But I've driven on a lot of roads and developments for Fairfax County, and I don't know what the length of Fairway is, but I have never been on a road where there's 5 speed bumps, and I don't know how the 3 more were chosen. I can understand one around the ball field. That's where a lot of kids are at in the summer and spring, but I don't know how the number 5 was come up with. Also, I would say on the end where there's 2 speed bumps now, often there's cars that park right on the speed bump. So your only way through is to go through the middle where the fire engines go. So it's kind of defeating the purpose. And I've seen people go through the middle. I'm sure you have as well, rather than go over the hump. So that's my question there. Why 5? There's 2 already there. Why not 6? Why not 7? Why not 20? Just rhetorically asking. Okay, thank you.
So the length of roadway overall is about 3,400 feet. So we do find that if we maintain a certain spacing between the devices, it does help bring down that operating speed over the length of the roadway. So, the 3 additional devices are devices that we can fit on the existing length of the roadway for the portion that we're looking at right now. And so we do feel that, with these additional devices, we might get a reduction in operating speeds over the whole length of the roadway. And for this length of roadway, it is fairly common for, multiple devices to be proposed.
Because I would even add on North Shore, I've seen people going 50, 60 miles an hour, and there's no humps there. And there's a Lake Ann school there. I've seen people going pretty fast past the school on North Shore.
Yeah, I'm not positive that the program is applicable
Right.
to that road.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Steve T, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Couple of questions. First, thank you for the opportunity to speak and have this public outreach. Would like to continue to partner and see what we can do to calm traffic methods, traffic speeding, but I also echo the sentiment of others that this speed bump solution seems like the nuclear option when there should be other options available. I think also if we're talking about the center line not being an option, what I've seen on the FAQs was also like the parking barriers on the sides, similar to what we see in DC, where there's a solid white line that forms a parking box for traffic, whether that's on one side or both sides. I would think that would help and would like to see that explored as an option. Getting to my questions though, did the western portion, and I assume it did because we're having this meeting, but did it meet the speed criteria? Because on one of the earlier slides that was presented, I saw that the westbound traffic speed was listed at 34, where the speed limit was 25. And that number I interpreted was supposed to be 10 miles per hour or greater. So yeah, my first question is confirming that we met the speed criteria. The second is how, safety obviously being a concern, how many accidents we had on Fairway Drive in this portion, and like what are we trying to prevent? Other than like, of course, it's safer to go slower, but are we seeing accidents? Are we seeing issues caused by that? To what other folks have said, people already drive down the center line. They figure out that you can drive down the middle of those speed bumps anyway and just continue going at whatever speed you're going to go. There has to be another option besides the humps and the quantity of humps.
Okay. So yes, we did qualify in the one direction. So when we're looking for the speed, we only need to qualify in one direction. And that eastbound 85th percentile speed was 40 miles an hour. So it did qualify, and that is, you're correct. That is why we're here talking about it. And there are other methods, but we do feel that, especially with an 85th percentile speed of 40 miles an hour, that the speed hump is a fairly good device to help with that higher speed. So, that is why we're going with this device. We do have some concern about people center tracking and going through the cutouts, but we did a follow-up study and found that we were seeing a reduction in speed on the two devices that we put in place on the eastern end. So, we feel, fairly comfortable proposing these devices with cutouts. And, we would feel that, the vertical deflection, the speed humps and the speed tables are going to be more effective reducing that high operating speed. So, regarding the crash information, we aren't required to pull crash data for this program. All we have to do is show that there is a speeding concern for it to qualify for the program. So I'm not sure what the crash history is for Fairway Drive, but we aren't required to pull that data.
Well, yeah, look forward to partnering and seeing what we can do.
Steve, can I
traffic?
ask you the
Thanks, Ron.
The 85th percentile speed? I think that might be confusing him. Is it like that's kind of an averaging where like we measured speeds as high as 75 miles per hour in that study, and a number of cars going like 50, 55 through that area. So that doesn't really give that impression.
Right. So the 85th percentile speed just means that, 15% of the vehicles recorded in that time frame were doing that speed or above. So, I think we're talking about, somewhere in the vicinity of, let me figure this out really quick. But I think we're looking at, somewhere in the vicinity of, over 100 vehicles in a 24-hour period going greater than 35 miles an hour. So, or going greater than 40 miles an hour, because that was 85th percentile speed in that eastern direction. So that, that is a fairly significant concern. The 40 mile an hour, 85th percentile speeds, a pretty high speed that we were, recorded. 1,400 vehicles in a 24-hour period is a fairly active roadway. So, we don't feel that, we're being, heavy-handed with proposing these 3 additional devices. Okay, and Steve, do you have anything else you'd like to add? You do have your hand up.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
I just
wait.
had somebody email me a question. I just wanted to make sure I ask it for them, and they couldn't attend the meeting.
Okay.
Am I losing my slot?
No, you can, I'm sorry, Steve, I thought that we had finished there, and if you'd like to continue on, please do.
Yeah, not really, just that was my concern. And I again, thank you for the opportunity. Looking forward to hearing what questions others have and what other solutions we can explore besides the speed humps. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, wrong Steve.
Okay.
Okay, Steve
Eh,
Sarandos, I think you're up to
Okay.
go.
Yeah, I had a question from Barry Fix. He emailed me, said he couldn't attend the meeting. He said he wanted to ask if there could be an additional speed hump placed west of Bakken Court and east of North Shore. It says, to me, the other three humps appear to be placed in good locations. So I think he was concerned about the people coming at high speed off of the North Shore, that hill there. So
Yeah, Ryan, thank you for pulling it up. So, Ryan has what I refer to as the field map. So this is the map we developed before we actually go out in the field. It shows us locations where, we basically can consider devices or can consider the vertical devices that we're proposing here. And unfortunately, because of the close proximity of the intersections and the stop condition in North Shore, we didn't have room for a device there in that area that you were asking about, Steve. So that's the reason why that first device is so far back down North Shore, is basically because of the road layout and the setback distance required by VDOT from an intersection.
right. So that's because of like other entrances to parking lots and that kind of thing too.
Not necessarily the parking lots, but the streets.
Okay.
We try to just take into consideration the streets.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it's an intersection, considered an intersection, particularly if the road has a road center line or if it's named, there are, like you said, parking lots, and then those aren't a part of the 150 setback that we have to be from intersections.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Certainly. Okay. And then if you have already asked your question, all I ask is that you lower your hand. If you have another question, please re-raise your hand, so I just can keep track of, make sure that I'm getting to everyone. Craig Branson, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute.
You can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about this. I'm so happy that you're doing this. I just wondered, one, how can I help? And two, when does voting start? Because this is great. I've lived here 30 years, and this is the best thing that's ever happened on this road. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So as we discussed earlier on one of the slides, after this meeting, the task force will need to reconvene and determine if they want to move forward. There are other questions that they have to take into consideration. And then at that point, we will try to pick a date for that ballot process to start. So at this point, we can't really say. We would generally expect that we would probably not be voting for another 3 to 5 weeks, and then have the ballot period open for somewhere in the time frame of 5 weeks. So we could be looking at 3 to 8 weeks, or 8 to 10 weeks before the ballot process concludes, if we move forward.
Thank you.
Mhm.
As far as how to help, and we definitely could use some help. You can go onto our website, and I'll post it in the chat, and sign up for the email list. I'll post the email also. And then we can let you know, like, when we want to do any of the, ballots or anything else we need to get done. We can get you involved. And thank you for offering.
All right, thank you for your question. And I
Okay,
think,
awesome. We do have some chat, people coming into the chat, and I think, Ryan, you're going to go ahead and hit that one off.
Yeah, sure. We have a couple questions in the chat here. So first one is, vehicles are traveling at 75 miles per hour past a children's ball field and children's school bus stops. If this effort fails due to the voting requirement, is FCDOT comfortable with doing nothing and simply allowing these kinds of speeds to continue?
So we are, basically needing to respond to the community's will as far as this is concerned. So if the community feels that these issues are, a big enough concern, then we will go ahead and install the devices. If the community is not supportive, then we don't feel comfortable moving forward, putting them in against, the general feel of the community.
Thanks, Steve. We have a comment here. The parking issue on the western side is my primary concern. The street gets very narrow with poor visibility leading to multiple near head-on collisions. The safety concern is exacerbated with children walking to school and families walking to church in the same section. Steve was talking about the 85th percentile speed. Steve from FCDOT was able to explain that. The study was completed December 18th, 2024. Was that pre-speed bumps on the east side? Steve Sarandos was able to explain that, and he said, nope, that was after the speed humps. And then we have another question from the chat. Why three bumps in close proximity? The east side has 2, and you say they are effective, so why 3 on the western side?
We were looking at actually putting in 3 on the eastern side, but we couldn't get sign off on the one that was closest to the ball field. So basically it's the spacing requirements that help kind of lay out the plan. And as Ryan showed earlier, we're basically working in the area where devices are allowed or basically fit. And we do feel that with the length of the roadway that we're working on right now, the additional 3 would be helpful, especially with the 85th percentile speed that was recorded.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Do we have any more from the chat? I'm sorry, Ryan, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Steve Sarandos put in the chat his website, fairwaydrive.org, and then also the task force email if anyone is interested. And then I know we have a couple hands raised, so I'll pass it over to you, Nicole.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So Melissa, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you for all the hard work that everybody's done. I am on the east side of the area, and I do appreciate having the speed bumps there. It has slowed down traffic. I am off of South Shore Road, so often I am walking my dog across the road. It does give them a little more visibility that the cars can see us to get across the street. I very much feel for the kids that are going across the street over to the ball field. I have seen many, many near misses of kids being hit almost, myself included, trying to get cars to slow down too, that you're visibly speeding through is a common occurrence. So I really welcome something for us to have a little bit of safety in mind for us across there. I've been in this area for over 24 years. So this is really great to see that we're finally getting to the point where we can possibly have that for a little safer for everybody's benefit. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa. And Rebecca, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. And as Melissa said, thank you to everyone who's done all of this work. I live on Orchard Lane and I'm a frequent pedestrian on Fairway Drive and Hook Road and that whole area. And I'm very supportive of trying to slow down the traffic. At the same time, I am concerned that even with the efforts to slow down traffic, that this plan to me is not as pedestrian friendly as I would have hoped, particularly in terms of crossing Fairway Drive For me, particularly around Hook Road on both sides, but I'm sure there are other places where people cross as well. You've got these speed humps, which are not where the intersections are, and there are no stop signs or crosswalks being put in. So I think, if I'm imagining how this would work out, the cars might be slowing down, but it's still kind of up to the pedestrians to, try to find a gap in the traffic and make it across the street in time before there's another car coming. So I read the FAQs and I saw that you're saying that it's not possible for whatever reason to put in stop signs and crosswalks, but I find that pretty unfortunate and not as pedestrian friendly as I wish we could be. So just making that comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we do have an active transportation group that you can reach out to. I think they have taken a look at Fairway, but I'm not positive. Trying to find locations where crosswalks might fit. So there are challenges, regarding trying to put in those crosswalks. I think they have looked. Shamali, I'm not positive if you are aware of any effort in the past few years from that group.
Steve?
Yes, I was just going to say we did look at putting in crosswalks specifically near the ball fields. We actually worked with Ruston Association as well because they had been wanting some. Unfortunately, VDOT has some very strict requirements in order to put in crosswalks. It is up to them to do, to approve crosswalks. And one of their requirements is that both sides have to have both the ADA ramps and a connecting sidewalk. And as you know, on the north side, there's not a place to have a connecting sidewalk. And so that was kind of the showstopper there. There was, one area where we could put one in, and we have gotten that one in, but that's the one that's been added over the last several years.
All right, thanks, Shamali.
Thank you. All right, and we can go ahead and move on to the next person that has a hand raised. M, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks. It's actually Melissa. So when you called the other Melissa, I unmuted myself, but I was being lazy when I typed my name in.
No worries.
I wanted to comment. I agree with the very first commenter here. I'm really opposed to speed bumps. I was opposed to the ones that went in on the opposite end, and primarily for one reason, and that is what you already stated to be fact, that folks tend to speed up between them. In addition, because these speed humps have the cutouts for emergency traffic, what I see, I would say 90% of the time, and I drive in and out multiple times a day because I own 2 businesses locally and live here in Lakeside Cluster. And that is that what happens is folks zoom between the 2 speed humps, then they swerve into the middle of the road and go on the emergency cutout and then back. And that happens despite the fact that there's a double yellow line painted there, but primarily I think it happens because there are cars parked on both sides of the speed hump, and the cars tend to park on those existing now speed humps on Fairway immediately adjacent to the humps. The homes that are there in front tend to always have cars parked. At least one of the speed humps always has a car parked on almost every side of it, which creates the situation that you were discussing earlier, where when somebody's parked on the side of the car, the tendency is to swerve into the middle of the road or drive in the middle of the road for that feeling of like safety and space, right? So that's evident that it's happening there. And I don't know why you would want to exacerbate that problem by creating 3 more of the same problem on the opposite end of the street. I also really agree with Rebecca, who said, none of this is pedestrian friendly at all. I'm thankful. I live on Orchard also. I'm thankful that the crosswalk is going in there. I still have one teenager that now has his own car, so he doesn't meet the school bus. But up until a month ago, was still meeting the school bus out there. And I do appreciate that. And I think, this presentation is very speed bump positive, very speed bump forward, obviously. But there are, I think, plenty of us who are, anti-speed bump. And really, I really, really wish that any of the other suggestions that were presented by the first commenter could be considered either by Ruston Association, by VDOT, by whomever, might need to tackle this other than a task force that simply wants to put speed bumps in? Because I think that's what we're dealing with here. We can talk all day long about what things we'd like, and you're going to tell us that they're not possible, but that's because you're here to present us with speed bumps. So I agree. We're getting this beautiful park redo across the street. That's going to bring even more people parking cars and even more children crossing willy-nilly because there's not a designated place for crossing. And that's really the problem. The problem isn't necessarily cars going over the speed limit, even if by only just a little bit. The problem is pedestrians in the middle of the road where they shouldn't be. What we need is sidewalks and crosswalks, and then there wouldn't be people in the street for cars to hit regardless of the speed that they're going. That's the end of my soapbox.
Well, all right, thank you. I mean, we do feel that as long as we can, lower the operating speeds on the roadway, it will help the pedestrian, achieve a little greater safety as they are, either walking along the roadway or walking across the roadway. And, regarding putting in crosswalks and sidewalks, that, Shamali kind of touched on it earlier. VDOT does have some, stringent requirements regarding the crosswalks, and trying to retrofit sidewalks in an existing community can be a pretty significant challenge, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have Craig Branson. You have your hand up.
I did. Thank you so much. I am so excited about this slowing down the overall speed of the road. That's the best thing about this entire plan. And that's why I'm thinking about the crosswalks and things. Is like that wouldn't accomplish the goal. The goal was to slow people down so these people crossing the street wouldn't be hit. But my question is on that whole speed bump thing where the people are parking right next to it, is it possible to put a no parking sign near those speed bumps? Thanks so much.
All right. Yeah, thanks for your question. And that is something that we might have to consider if we are seeing a continuous problem with that. So I think we will reach out to VDOT to see if they would have a concern with that. So we might be visiting that issue.
Okay, thank you. And once again, if you do have your hand raised and your question has already been answered, if you can lower your hand once again, and if you have another question in the future, re-raise that hand just so I make sure I get to everybody's questions. Also, in the chat, if we could remain to questions right now, just so we can get those out of the way, and you're welcome to comment as well, but we just want to make sure that we're answering questions. Okay, and Ryan, I'm going to shoot it on over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, like you said, we had a couple comments. Brooke said, thank you. Steve said, I agree. Unfortunately, crosswalks aren't part of the program per household. It is a pedestrian friendly. Ask the people that walk in my neighborhood. Not ideal, but people tell me all the time how much easier it is to cross the road. The next comment we have is when we addressed the east end, we tried to get a stop sign. VDOT said no. We tried to get a crosswalk. VDOT said no. We tried to get a speed sign. We were told we could not get one, but we were told we could get one, but it never happened. Next comment said frustrating. Another comment, people also say how much easier it is to pull out in their cars without fear of being hit. The problem is not people walking. That is one of the reasons for moving to Reston. It's the traffic. Would recommend this task force seize actions until serious effort is put into two less invasive, less permanent, less costly options. Suggested painting a center line and or introducing one or more your speed signs. We kind of touched on that earlier in the presentation. Agreed, the speed hump should be no parking zones. Another comment, I've lived in my current home for nearly 23 years, raised 3 children here, lived in Lake Ann area for 46 years and been a driver here for 37 years. Reston is made for pedestrians. Yes, I agree, but there are better solutions for traffic calming for both vehicles and pedestrians that are not speed humps. Another comment here. Thank you so much for this effort. I'm looking forward to voting and to getting traffic to slow down. We do have a question here. Has Fairfax County Police been brought into regarding monitoring speeding on pedestrian heavy street?
So
Sorry, that was a lot.
that is a request that the community can always make. So that you would just need to reach out to the Reston Police Station and see if they can come in and do some enforcement. Obviously, they are fairly busy, so for residential and the side streets, they're not going to be able to, put in a lot of resources or time as far as speeding enforcement is concerned. But I always encourage people to reach out and talk to your police and see what they can do.
Um,
Yeah.
may I just pop in just for a moment to address a couple of those? As far as the speed radar signs, I know that Steve Knudsen had mentioned that the police do have a few of those. We only have 4 in the entire Reston District Station, which actually the Reston District Station covers a part of Great Falls. It's not just Reston proper. And so there are a lot of requests for them and they rotate around. Generally, if those are placed, they are placed for about a 3 to 4 week period and then have to be moved to another location. So it's not a permanent solution. We are in the county looking at the possibility of having a more permanent type of signage. Don't have that as of yet. Um, the other question was about police enforcement. We have asked police to do some speed enforcement along Fairway Drive at various points, and they have done so. But again, um, they are tasked all over, and if there's a call somewhere, they have to leave and go do that. The parking, the traffic enforcement people do as much as they can to get people to slow down around the community as far as the police go.
Can you hear me?
There was. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Well, I live in Orchard Green, and I've been here for about 40 years. And I have driven up and down Fairway Drive for a long time. On the eastern end, we have parking on both sides of the street, which makes it very difficult to do much speeding. Now, once you clear into where the ball fields are, you can technically speed. But the point I want to make is the speed signs. There is one at the far end on the western end of Fairway Drive, which when you make the turn, you're busy not hitting people because you're dodging around parked cars. On the eastern end, after you come off Wheelie, you don't notice the sign. Those are the only 2 speed signs on there. It would make sense to me that if you put the 25-mile-an-hour speed sign at the western end of the ball field and on the eastern end of the ball field, and after you go over your speed bumps on the eastern end of Fairfax, had another 25-mile-an-hour speed sign, people be aware of what the speed limit is on the driveway. Right now, most people, like I have driven that for years, and when I make the turn off of Wheelie, I'm focused on other things, and I know where the sign is, but I almost never visually spot it. Coming off of North Shore, which is at 25 miles an hour because of the school, you're so focused on where the parked cars are, you don't see that 25-mile-an-hour speed sign. So to me, putting in 2 or 3 more 25-mile-an-hour speed signs would be a very cheap way of reinforcing what the speed limit is on Fairway Drive. On a second comment, I have a number of friends who live in Maryland where they have speed bumps all over their community. They've been living with those things for over 20 years. They are now removing them because what they have gotten over the years is that people go over the speed bump, they accelerate to the next speed bump, then they go over the speed bump, they accelerate. So they actually have more speeding and more aggravated drivers than if they had the damn thing just with speed signs and stuff so people knew what was going on. So they're now removing the things because they cause more problems than they have solved. And I would say that if you want to put in some speed signs and you want to reinforce the thing, you can get solar powered speed flashers, so that if someone's going 25 to 30 miles an hour over, say they're going a couple of miles over the speed limit, it would send off a flash and give you a visual attention that you're going over the speed limit. Those are very inexpensive things to do, and they don't cause problems for the snows cleaners. It doesn't cause problems for the emergency vehicles. Like, you're on Fairway Drive, which is a major emergency vehicle pathway to get over to the Lake Ann Senior Center, which is now 4 times larger than it used to be. And so you have many more trips of the emergency vehicles. So putting in more of these speed bumps is not doing anybody any favors in terms of the emergency vehicles. Anyway, that's my comments about the fact that this is a very expensive and probably something that should be done only after you've tried several less expensive and possibly more effective alternatives.
All right, well, we can talk to VDOT to see if they'd be willing to add any other speed limit signs on Fairway. I'm not positive that they're going to be too open to it. They're, pretty much set at putting them at the entry level or entry points into communities on roadways. And so where they are placed on Fairway Drive do seem to be kind of like their standard practice as far as that is concerned. Regarding this, the pole mounted speed display, or your speed is signage, we've discussed that earlier. We only have it available right now on a limited term through the police. We are looking at possibly bringing that on board, but I'm not positive that we would use it in neighborhoods like this. And we're hoping that the cutouts do make it a little bit easier for the emergency vehicles to pass without losing too much speed as they traverse Fairway Drive.
Okay, thank you. So it seems the chat's quite active right now. Ryan, if you want to head on over there.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry about that. So we have a question here. What about VDOT putting in speed cameras, since this is a children-friendly zone? From personal experience, a speed camera on soapstone is very effective. Thanks.
So there are limited locations, and it is a pilot program for the speed cameras right now. So it does have to be in a school zone and or a work zone, and they are only on for the time when kids are either coming or leaving school. So I'm not positive that Fairway Drive is going to qualify for a speed camera at this point.
That's correct, David. And that is not a county rule. That is by state legislation. We just don't have the authority from the state to put speed cameras like that anywhere else. There have been some pieces of legislation that have gone to the General Assembly to try to get speed cameras in other locations. We have not yet been able to get that passed at the state level to give us that authority to do speed cameras anywhere except for in school zones and only during the, like the arrival and departure times when speed is reduced.
All right, thanks, Holly.
Thanks. We have a couple comments here. I've lived in this location for 20 years and I currently have 4 kids. We have always been terrified of Fairway Drive. Community support for this is essential. If you don't like speed humps, are you willing to all do all the work if it would take to implement a different solution to the problem, because it's a lot of work sometimes doing the right thing, which is slowing cars down on our busy road, protecting our kids and neighbors might require people to not entirely agree with the exact solution, but come together and agree that a solution is needed. We have another comment here. It seems unlikely that people are going 50 to 75 miles per hour going to care about signs or painted lines. I love the cost-effective aspects of this plan. We do have a question here. Maybe you could discuss the results of the speed study you did that showed the results of the east end humps, specifically how much it slowed cars down.
So we did show, Nicole, do you know where we can grab that really quickly?
Yeah, so I'm looking for it right now. Trying to find
So we're
it.
gonna
Give me
try
a moment.
to retrieve that. But we did show, a fairly decent reduction in speed. That was earlier on after they were installed. I think we did give it some time for drivers to become, aware that these devices were in place and maybe, modify their driving behavior a little bit. But it was at least a year ago. Shmali, I don't know if you remember when we were out there, but it was around that same time. But we were showing a significant reduction in speed.
So Steve, we do have a comparison difference in when we collected the original time before we installed those devices and then after. So it looks like and this is based off of 85th percentile as we did when we first collected it. So the eastbound lane was lowered the speed at least 12 miles an hour and miles per hour, and then the westbound 85th percentile speed was recorded reduced the speed at 10 miles per hour. So we saw a reduction in 12 and 10.
Do we have a date on that?
Yeah, so we collected that 11/20/2024.
Okay, all right. So about a year and a half ago. So when we did that. So it's hard to say, if driver behavior has changed any amount since then. But at the time that we did that follow-up speed study, we were showing a fairly decent reduction in speed from prior to the installation.
Thanks, Steve. A couple other comments we have here. Speed signs are not going to work. People are not respectful. You need speed cameras as was suggested. Agreed, Claudia. The police handle the automated your speed signs. If one of you are asking for them would be willing to take that on, it would be great. Yes, we're willing to do that work. Is that the reduction on the speed bump itself or after it?
So I think that, it wasn't on top of the device, and I believe that we did collect, fairly close to where we collected data prior to the installation. But I do believe that it was in between the two devices.
And then we do have a comment from Shamali here. She said that I do want to let everyone know Supervisor Alcorn's office has been working for the past several years on ways to reduce speeds and improve pedestrian safety. We are limited by what VDOT allows us to do. I'm more than happy to ask for additional speed limit signs, and we do have this area flagged for pedestrian improvements as funding allows. And we are caught up in the comment section.
Okay,
Right,
and go ahead,
sorry.
Steve, sorry.
I was just going to say we can wait a few minutes to see if anything else comes in. But we do have some contact information. I believe Ryan just brought it up. So if people do have a question after the meeting, they can send an email to dotinfo@fairfaxcounty.gov and have Fairway Drive, the western portion, traffic calming in the subject line, or call 703-877-5600 and ask to talk to a staff member about the traffic calming effort on Fairway Drive. Or you can reach out to the Hunter Mill office, and that would be huntermill@fairfaxcounty.gov, and I would put the same information in the subject line of Fairway Drive Western Portion Traffic Calming, or call 703-478-0283 and ask to talk to somebody about the Fairway Drive Traffic Calming project. I do believe that we have sent the slides out to the supervisor's office, and those should be able to be shared out to the task force and then to the community at large. And then we have recorded this session tonight, and that should be available on YouTube sometime in the next couple of weeks. You think that'd be correct, Nicole, about a couple of weeks?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe a little bit sooner, just depending on how quickly we can move it through the process. Once that recording is made available, we will send that to the district's office of Shamali there, and probably share it with the task force as well. So please feel free to reach out to them for the recording link.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And thank you everybody who logged on tonight and who participated in the discussion. And, for the next step, the task force does need to reconvene and decide how they want to move forward. If they want to still move forward with this plan. If they do, then they need to reach out to Shamali at the supervisor's office, and we will organize a ballot meeting just to go over that process one more time. I know that you went through it before on the other end, but we can reconvene, meet again, and just discuss how to move through that process.
Yeah, I plan on taking you up on it, even though we've been through it before.
Right. And it does look like we have no more hands raised and no more questions in the chat.
Yep.
All right. Well, everybody have a good evening, and thank you for attending.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.